Oh,はいはいはい、こんにちは。ごめん。ソロへようこそ。ソロがサスケしたポッドキャストを見ています。Let's go! 3、2、1. Hello there, my anime people. Welcome back to Seoul Spectate. I am Seoul, and in today's episode, we'll be reviewing My Next Life as a Villainess. All Routes Leads to Doom. Breakdown. So this anime came out in spring of 2020, so it's very new. It has the genre of comedy, drama, fantasy, romance, and school. And it was created by Studio Silver Link. And it has amazing animes down its belt, such as Cavalry of the Failed Knight, Masamune-kun's Revenge, Baka to Test, and Death March to the Parallel. This anime show has 12 episodes, and I believe at this time it currently has its 11th episode just aired. And it recently also received a dub, which up to this point has up to episode 5. This anime show received a rating of 7.81 from My Anime List, where 23,816 users voted, and we'll also see at the end of part 2 whether or not that is deserved. Synopsis breakdown. Katarina is a girl who is very annoying, very rude, and is basically a villain. However, when she bumps her head, she remembers that she was actually a Japanese girl who was 16 at the time that she died, and got reincarnated in her favorite role-playing game, in which one girl falls in love with either one of the 5 suitors that the game has to offer. However, she did not get reincarnated as the main protagonist, but as the villain, whose roots all lead to either her going to prison or being exiled. Because she is so afraid that she died early, she does not want to relive that same situation, especially not in this world, being that all routes lead to her demise. She's trying everything she can in order to prevent those doom flags from activating and essentially ruining her new life. So before we get into this episodic breakdown, I'm going to introduce to you guys our special guest star.
Hey guys. Yeah, you can call me Junior. I'm really excited to talk about the show. Just recently watched it too.
And how many anime shows have you watched so far?
For my whole life, it's a couple of hundred, honestly. I've been watching it since I was young. I started off, with Sailor Moon. For my Sailor Moon fans, that was my original. And, I've just been watching it my whole life, all different types, all different genres,
Okay. Oh, okay. Good. This is a good question. Have you ever been in the anime club at college?
No, I've always thought about joining it, but, I don't know. I always usually talk to people about anime on social media, through Twitter and stuff. That's where I usually got my enjoyment, or, through just people that I met as, regular friends, and then they were into it, too. But I never thought about joining the anime club, but it's always sounded kind of interesting and catch my attention.
Okay, so when I went for my college, because we had that too, that shit was a mess, I'm not gonna lie. So these people, they would, give an episode out, and everyone would be talking. Literally everyone is talking over it, and they got me so annoyed because I'm trying to listen to what's going on, and they're always talking over it. One person even ruined one of the episodes where, they gave the ending away so quickly. Everyone was just like, "Are you joking?" Everyone ready to fight her. They were so done. So from there on, I was kind of just going to see what kind of animes they listed out that I haven't seen yet, and then I would just go home and just watch it because there was no way I was gonna be able to watch it over there.
No, yeah, honestly, spoilers are a huge issue for me, and also growing up, I watched anime by myself, so I was never really feeling inclined to necessarily watch it with other people. Maybe talk about it, to have discussions and stuff like that. But it's mainly something that I watch on my own. But we've always had each other because we would always talk about it growing up. So I guess that kind of satisfied it for me a lot too.
Yeah.
Also, I think I walked past my school's anime club once, and they were role playing Dragon Ball Z. And I was yeah, no, I think
that was too much for you. Okay.
That was too much.
All right, so let's get into episode 1 of My Next Life as a Villainess. So, for me, the first episode, I like the idea of her being reincarnated as a villain because you don't necessarily see that a lot. The only time I've ever seen someone get reincarnated as a villain would be Overlord. So you don't get to see a lot of this. But I feel like that title does not represent that anime at all.
How so?
So we're assuming she's going to be a villain this whole time. Because she gets reincarnated, and you kind of... Well, we initially don't know that. Because you see her kind of walking around, doing her thing, and then you get to see her being a bitch. And then, once she hits her head, she remembers that she was a Japanese girl and all this other stuff, right? So from that point on, she's a nice person. Like, she does everything nice. And she's not really being a villain. She's within a villain's role, but she's not fulfilling that role, if that makes any sense. So for me, that title doesn't make any sense. Because My Next Life as a Villainess, she's not a villain. She doesn't do anything villainy at all during this anime show, you know?
See, it's interesting you bring that up because when I first heard the title, I didn't really think much of it, mainly because I never really heard the word villainess used before.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really draw the very, in hindsight, obvious conclusion that, like, it has to do with being a villain. So watching the show, you know, the first couple of scenes are, like, of this bratty child, and I'm like, yo, whose kid is this? Like, but, you know, she was, like, a noble lady, so it makes sense that she was a bratty child. It's very disrespectful, super rude. And then, you know, she has that scene where she falls and bumps her head, and she remembers her past life. And even as she remembers her past life, like, she's ridiculing herself.
Mm-hmm.
And then she realizes that that was her, and all of a sudden has all these memories back. And then, like you said, she's a whole changed person. And it made me wonder, so does she completely lose who she was growing up?
Yeah.
She was a bratty evil child, you know? She was really on the path to becoming the villainess.
Mm-hmm.
And she immediately loses that as she remembers her memories and her past. So at first I was wondering, what if, you know, the villainess lost her life as soon as the girl bumped her head, or she just immediately just gained back all her memories, and like for some reason her memories of her past changed who she was as a villain, because they don't really talk about her terrible tendencies from her childhood. Well, the mother brings it up eventually in certain episodes in the future, because the mother, I think, is part of the reason why she becomes a villainess.
Yeah,
that's another story, or related.
Yeah.
But yeah, going into the show, I thought it was a super interesting perspective to try to not only have somebody who's in the role of a villain, the perspective of the role of the villain, but somebody who doesn't want to be the villain. And she doesn't want to be the villain because she doesn't want to die, because she knows how the game goes.
Mm-hmm.
And the villainess is just pretty much destined for doom, because that's her role as a character, for the happy ending and the bad ending. So she's the
See, I thought it was going to be three things. I thought it was either going to be that the person that's in her body is just a straight up bitch, and that's what she is, and that's what she does. And so once I didn't see was that, I kind of ruled that off. The second thing I thought is maybe she goes in and out of that role kind of bit. Like, she remembers that she was a Japanese girl, she remembers that she was a nice person, so, you know, she has that, but then sometimes she will forget that, and then, you know, go back to being a villain, and then it's like that back and forth. But after you watch a couple episodes, you're like, okay, that's not happening. And then my third one was, I thought that she would be nice, but mistakenly do stuff that is still evil without her really knowing and progressing that evil storyline, you know, kind of thing.
Yes, actually, I think she even talks about it in the first couple episodes. Like, she didn't want to accidentally, you know, create her own doom. Also, it makes you wonder, like, if she's destined for doom, can she even possibly change that destiny just by being nice?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I was kind of considering, and we could talk about this more further, because, you know, part of her changing her attitude, well, I think we should talk about first what she's doing to try and change the storyline. So, because she's destined for doom, she's either going to be exiled or she's going to be put in jail.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the endings, which both for her are just not good at all.
Yeah, no.
And so I remember her strategy was raise her magical powers in order to, one, defend herself and also create a fortune, depending if she gets jailed or exiled. Because if she gets exiled and she can make money, she's fine with that lifestyle. So she wants to raise her magical powers, which is earth magic. And so the first step, she wants to increase her powers. She also wants to do everything she can to avoid certain plot points that she calls doom flags.
Mm-hmm.
What about it is her morality as a person, and what about it is her just trying to prevent her own doom? Like, you know what I mean? Because there's certain things that she does that people could say, like, are morally they're just, like, the right thing to do and the nice thing to do. And you could say that that's just who she was as a human back when she was a person. Or you could just say she's doing it because she's like, well, I can avoid my doom from doing this, kind gesture. So it makes me wonder, like, how much of it is selfishness, but how much of it is, like, she genuinely cares for these characters. And I think in the beginning, I felt like a lot of stuff was more selfish. That her reasoning for doing it is like, no, I need to stop this from happening or else I'm going to be doomed. Versus, I think when she further builds relationships with these characters, she just does things more out of the kindness of her heart and because she considers them friends.
Yes.
To go back to specifically the first episode, that's when she first meets Keith, her little brother, and one of the doom flags is that, like you said, that he stays, she bullies him, so he stays trapped in his room and isolates himself and then becomes a womanizer. So she tries to avoid that by hanging out with him, ends up still creating a situation because he accidentally hurts her, and the parents, and he also feels guilty, and the parents kind of like reprimand him, and he stays locked in his room, and she is like, in distress. She's like, no, I need to save him. I need to get him out of there.
That was actually my favorite scene too, when she grabs that axe and she's like, if you're by the door, you better move that ass. And then she starts just hacking at it. And and to me, that scene was also very smartly done because it kind of also shows an imagery of that wall being put a barrier between him and other people that he's trying to isolate himself from, and her basically breaking it. So not only did it do it physically for her to get in to see him, but it also was something metaphorically, which I thought was really well done as well.
Yeah, that was a really heartwarming scene. Also my favorite scene of the episode. And it really goes to show you, like, the lengths that she will go. I do want to say to avoid her doom, because I think that's the driving force, especially early on.
Mm-hmm.
But part of me also feels like she was concerned for Keith. That she was concerned. She didn't want him to live out that life of solitude and sadness, for so many years. So she really just took an axe from her family's home and just busted down the door. Which
the mother was not having it at all. Do you remember when we busted the door from my closet when we were play fighting?
That was definitely yours. That busted the door.
No, you were the one who pushed me after I told you not to. And then we were trying to be smart and we taped it. But it kept, like, falling in half because of the weight. It was just so stupid. We tried that. So now let's move into episode 2. So for this episode, I have 2 things that I really enjoyed from it. The first thing was I loved seeing the interaction that she stole when she was talking to Maria. And, she tells her, oh, you have like a green thumb. And then later on, she remembers that, oh my God, like that was the interaction for her conversation with Alan, which is Gerald's brother or stepbrother or something, second line.
Gordo?
Yeah, Gordo. So then when he goes to say the same thing, it doesn't work out for him. And then she's too busy talking about Katarina and all this other stuff. So that's when he kind of comes in and he's just like, why are you trying to take my woman, trying to womanize her? That whole thing to me was very funny.
Yeah, I noticed, like, with a lot of the characters, I think it's become a trope in the show where everybody is, in love with her, and they kind of just forget that he's engaged, and he always kind of has to remind them that he's like, she's engaged to me, guys. Like, I don't understand why you guys are fighting for attention.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that has the end of the day. But it's funny because you don't really see much of a bond between them. Like, I don't really ship them at all. Honestly, I really kind of ship her with his brother, Alan. And when, he's first introduced in this episode. And this is an episode where she meets him, and he kind of has this, like, mentality where he's jealous of his older brother. Like, he wants to just be as good as him. Like, he's very competitive. It's a competition to him. So he meets Katarina, and he wants to, like, challenge her in all these things. And so, she obviously picks a tree climbing challenge because she remembers in her past life she was really good at tree climbing. And so he just can never beat her at all. So every day he comes and he tries to challenge her and challenge her and challenge her and challenge her. And honestly, I really find it so cute and sweet. Like, I just really like their bond and seeing them get to, like, bond during this episode. Yeah, I don't know. I really ship them after watching this whole, like, interaction. Also, I think the voice actor for, because I'm watching the dub. I was watching the dub, and the dub currently has episodes 1 through 5 out.
Which you're lucky, because at the time that it came out, I was watching the sub, which I don't have an issue with. I enjoy it, but continue.
No, yeah, usually I watch a lot of subs. I really enjoy subs. Of course, the original always has that authenticity that the dub doesn't have, but also the dub provides, something for people who they like to watch anime in the background while they're doing something, while they're eating food, or people who just don't like subtitles. And oftentimes, dubs are kind of on the lower end of the stick, but this one is a pretty good dub. And I was going to say that it does offer some familiar voices. So the character Alan is voiced by Bryce Tappenbrook, who, if you don't recognize the name, you'll recognize the voice. He's the main voice of Kirito from SAO, to name a popular series. But he's been in hundreds of dubs. Like, his voice, you hear it and you know who it is.
He has our whole childhood line.
No, seriously. It's like, you recognize that character. And I think because it was that voice for that character, because the voice actor played such a lead role in other series, it kind of gave me the feeling of, like, oh, he's going to be a very relevant character because of his voice actor is usually, like, a main role. And so part of me wonders if maybe she'll end up with him, if she ends up with anybody. Because I really don't ship her with her engaged partner, Gordo. But I really do like the bond.
Because you kind of see them feel like it's a little bit forced, because when Gordo first gets, introduced, is due to a mistake that he felt that he had to take responsibility for. And you don't get to see too much interaction, because since he is going to be the first in line to be a prince, he's very reserved and meticulous as to how he interacts, whereas Alan doesn't have that same responsibility, so he feels more free to, share his emotion and be completely open and honest about them, which obviously allows Katarina to go in, especially that tree climbing scene. I lost it when it was just 1, 2, 3, go, and she's already climbing like a little spider all the way to the top. But that, that was basically them testing each other. And through that experience, he kind of learned that, I may not be good at certain things that other people are good at, but I do have my own qualities that I am good at that some people cannot do, And I like that too. I feel like in my heart of heart, she's not ending up with anybody. It's that kind of anime show where you're not going to get the protagonist pick someone from the harem to actually be with, I think it's just going to be up in the air the whole time. I mean, I've seen a lot of harems, and I've only ever seen 2, maybe 3, where they actually pick someone, like legitly pick someone, So, and the way this anime is very lighthearted and airy, I don't think they're trying to do all that.
Well, then, that also begs the question of, because, so we know that the main protagonist of the video game is a character that hasn't been featured yet currently in episode 2. But we know that she's going to be coming along, and we do hear a little bit about her when, because Katarina, she has those moments where she has, like, a mental discussion, which I also really like how they portray her thinking about her.
Yeah, I love that.
They'll also have, like, her panel of, like, different personalities talking about what to do in the situation, and they'll talk about the game. And so the main protagonist of the video game, the heroine, they call her, she's supposed to end up with one person, right? And so she might end up with somebody, or she might not really be interested in it, because Katarina is stealing the love scenes from other characters.
Yeah.
The other girls might not end up with somebody, and she, even though she's engaged, but that means because she's already engaged. So if she doesn't end up with Gordo, who does he end up with? Do they call off the engagement? Does he end up with the heroine? Because that's an option in the video game. So it makes you wonder, like, what is going to happen, or are they all, or does she call off the engagement, and they're all just going to be satisfied without it? Well, everybody except for the mom, of course, because she definitely wants her to be engaged to Prince.
Yeah. All right, so let's move into episode 3. Okay, so what did you think?
All right, so episode 3, we meet Sophia Asghar and her brother, Nicole. And honestly, this was such a heartwarming episode too. And it was interesting because I was watching the ending theme of the last episode, and I noticed a girl with like white hair and red eyes. I was like, "Who is that?" Like, we haven't seen that character before, and I honestly have a really strong affinity for white-haired characters. They're always just so cool. So I was like, "When are we gonna see this person? Like, they look mad cool." And so we finally meet them in this episode, and Sophia, pretty much her plot line is that she gets bullied for having white hair and red eyes, and Katarina, she's like, what? Like, as soon as she meets her, she thinks that she's gorgeous and she's so pretty. And she, like, protects her from bullies. She, like, fends them off. And honestly, she was really happy to meet her because she was an otaku in her past life. And so she was super into anime and video games and manga. And she was reading a light novel in the beginning of the episode, and she wanted to talk about it so bad with somebody. And then she finally meets Sophia, and Sophia, she writes a reference to her hair from because somebody in the light novel that she read had similar hair, and Sophia like picks up on the reference, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like you read it too," and so that's kind of like the blossoming of their relationship. And I thought it was like really cool for her to make a friend who has like common interests and stuff, and also like save her from bullies and stuff. And it was really heartwarming.
Yeah. So now we're gonna jump into episode 4. So for this episode, what I enjoyed was kind of seeing them grow up and seeing the effects that Katarina has had in their lives now that she has fundamentally changed it into something better, and you get to see her semi-notice some of those changes, but you clearly, because she's an airhead, you don't get to see her completely understand whether or not it's truly completely changed them for the better. And one of the things that I like is always the interaction between Keith and Gordo, where they're always trying to... Well, Gordo's always trying to get Katarina's, by himself, and then Keith is always, like, butting in. And that, to me, I enjoyed a lot. Now, it was a little bit weird during the dance that Gordo wanted to kiss Katarina and, like, basically move the relationships into something to seem a little bit more sexual. And I was like, that's a little bit weird. And even when, like, they went to the school finally, right? Gordo invited Katarina to come to have candy. And you can tell that's basically like a trap. But my funny thing is, before he can close the door, Keith comes in. He's like, "Hi, so I heard you invited all of us for a get-together." And he was like, "I don't remember having your name in this list." Like that, those interactions to me are very funny. I enjoyed that from this episode.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like, this show is definitely one that you want to just like try to focus on as much as possible. Like, I did mention like multitasking while you're watching it, but like it does kind of draw you in, and you do miss out on little instances like that are really like make up the bread and butter of the show, the little heartwarming scenes. And I also thought it was really interesting too that he all of a sudden is trying to become like sexual with her. I think he's really trying to like claim her, as his fiance, especially now that he's older too. Because he tried to give her like a hickey in the middle of the party, and Keith comes over to like wipe it off and stuff, and like just watch over her. And also, this was a really like turning point for the season, I feel like, because they're finally becoming adults now. Because we only saw them as children before, and the game is set when they enroll in the Magic Academy. And so now, the first couple episodes were setting the stage of their childhood and stuff for the game, and now the game actually begins when they're older and in high school.
Mm-hmm. And to me, and then you get to finally meet Maria because, she's been talked about a lot of being the cause for Katarina's demise and having, all these issues. So it's very interesting to see who this person is and how she will interact with Katarina now,
Right, yes. And throughout this episode, we were like, I was waiting for her to show up. We were seeing her in the background and stuff. And so I was like, oh, like, what is she going to be like when we finally meet her? Like, what's going to happen? How are things going to change? Yeah, it was super interesting because in this episode, you see that Maria's being bullied, by girls in the school. And Katarina sees this. She's like, oh no, like, and so she goes and protects her and saves her from the bullies. And Katarina ends up remembering that in the video game, it was Katarina that was bullying Maria, and that Jordo was the one to save Maria, the heroine. And so it shows that it's going to take a really interesting turn. You don't know where exactly it's going to go because she's stealing another developing love plot point from the video game.
And then what do you think? So she also has like flashbacks of her friend, because initially when she was in Japan, her friend was the one that introduced her to the game that she ends up playing, right? And they were having a conversation about this mysterious suitor that is completely hard to do. And before she gets to tell her any information, it kind of, stops. So because she tells her like, oh, don't tell me, like I kind of want to do it myself. And then we get introduced to, I believe is the president that's also kind of stepping down or transitioning for someone else to take his place, and that's Sirius Duke. That's the boy with the red hair. And I know they're trying to make it seem like, oh, could he be the one we're talking about, or is it just someone else, or like does it even matter? To me, obviously he's the mysterious one, but because we don't know anything about him, I'm kind of interested to see how he develops. Like they slowly introduced him, and they're slowly introducing him more and more, and having more interactions with either other supporting members or Katarina herself, and you're seeing that kind of grow. So I'm interested to see where that would go.
Yeah, actually, it's funny they bring him up. So far lately, he doesn't have a huge role in the show. She does kind of allude to him because she mentions how in the game he wasn't much of a relevant character, but like in the show he's like a really exceptional student, like a really exceptional person. But she has yet to form a bond with him. He's not part of her little entourage that she's developed so far. So I think he's definitely something to be watchful of for the rest of the season.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna jump into episode 5. So for this episode, we're centering around Maria, and Katarina and her brother Keith goes on kind of like a little road trip kind of thing, and they're going around the neighborhood, and they're hearing a lot of rumors about Maria and her family because, again, Maria, not a lot of people that aren't nobles have magical abilities. And because Maria manifested a magical ability, and at that a light one, which is extremely rare, everyone assumes that her mother cheated, and that destroys her family. The father ends up leaving, and they're trying to ask Katarina and Keith, since they know her, whether or not those tales are true, kind of thing. And you kind of see the dysfunctionality between Maria and her mother throughout this, and how it sort of gets mended towards the end, which to me it got mended a little bit too quickly, but I understand for the amount of time that they have for the show. But the reason why I loved this episode a lot is because we really get to go more in depth of Maria, because initially when we go into hearing about Maria, we're kind of just, well, at least the way I took it, I don't know about you, she to me was the problem. We don't know her, but we know that every time someone interacts with her, my girl Katarina has a chance to, fuck up her life. And we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to be friends with her. We're trying to, scout out, spy, see what we can do to prevent this kind of thing from happening, So as you see Katarina grow into a friendship with her, and now we're going more in depth into her backstory, I enjoyed that a lot because it fleshes out Maria's character, which I didn't think they will have a chance to do, which it was nice, because they did that for the rest of the characters that Katarina meets. So it's good to see this happening here. And the main thing that I think I enjoy even more is because, in a video game, I'm sure in this video game, this scene doesn't really exist, But because this world is real and this is what Katarina is living, she's able to kind of break the boundaries that a game would normally have, to actually meet Maria in her normal setting and her mother, because throughout this episode she never says that this was like a flag or a scene for someone else that they do. No, this is her going outside of that.
Yeah, like you said, she didn't really mention Maria's past, like history and stuff like that during the video game. She learns about it while she's going on the trip to go visit her. And I think where we are now in the story, she really can't anticipate what's going to happen anymore. I think she's changed the plot so much that the storyline is going to end up being very different, and something that she did not expect from when she played the game. And I really just love how she's changing and affecting these characters' lives. Like the scene where she pretty much shows how she saved Maria from like a life of solitude and like bullying and loneliness by giving her by being her friend. It reminds me of like how when she went to go save her brother Keith from the room and like save him. So that was another like really heartwarming scene for me. And yeah, it was like a really cute episode. Like you said, I did think the relationship between the mother and the daughter kind of was resolved too quick. I was kind of salty at the mom, really, because she kind of was just like, oh, well, I was too busy with my own thing, so I never really took the time to take care of my daughter. That's not okay. But yeah, so that was like really upsetting. But also, something interesting that I noticed was at the end of the episode, Katarina goes back home, and because she was going to Commoner's Town, she wore like commoner clothing. And so she forgot that she was wearing it. And so when she went to go see her mom was livid because she heard that she started a farm at the school and she's been farming and that she's wearing commoner's clothing. And I speculate that she might end up meeting her doom regardless because of the mother, because of something the mother does. The mother is probably tired of her antics and wants to like just get rid of her or something. Or I think something's going to happen with the mother. I don't know, that's what I'm assuming, just because like I said, where we're at now, we're not really going to be able to anticipate what's going to happen because it's not going to be like the video game at all.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so with that in mind, let's move into episode 6. Okay, so I have a gripe with episode 6, but first I want to know your opinion about it.
My opinion on episode 6 was... It was a really cute episode. They went out... Jordo had the intentions of taking Katarina out on a date, and she mistakenly invited everybody else on the invitation, thinking it was like a group hangout type of situation going on. And what stood out to me in this episode was that Keith kind of made an advance on her, and so did Nicole. And I was kind of like, ugh, because this episode kind of confirmed my sneaking suspicion that they're going to try to do like a little incestuous kind of action, because there was a scene where Katarina was laying down sleeping on the grass and her brother Keith was sitting next to her, and like it looked like he was trying to go and kiss her while she was sleeping, and she immediately like woke up right beforehand and was having some weird dream. And so I was kind of like, oh, here we go. But there was the other scene with like Nico where he makes an advance on her, where he like grabs her by the face and gets in real close and was like telling her that, I'm so happy to be your friend, and like, just give me this moment to stay with you. And I was like, oh, so is he gonna try to be with her? So yeah, those are the two things that stood out to me, those two scenes in particular for this episode.
Yeah, but doesn't it also show a little bit how she isn't going to pick anyone because she's oblivious to Gordo, she's oblivious to Keith. She basically couldn't even, like, she collapsed and got confused when Nicole said that. So it, to me, that kind of refines kind of the idea that she's not really going to pick anybody. But so my feelings for the episode was, it was so fucking annoying to me. It's a filler episode. You are a 12-episode anime show. You're trying to develop this story and this plotline, and to me, when I see a filler episode in an anime that's only 12 episodes, that tells me that there's not a lot of story or content to discuss about.
Well, hold on, I disagree. I would not call this episode a filler episode.
Junior, it's like little nibbles of like random stuff that she did that does not progress the story at all, but gives you little mini interactions, which they could have still had those interactions interwoven within their episodes, like little stuff like that. But this is a filler episode.
I mean, it didn't have... Oh no, I'm lying. It did kind of have a kind of definitive plot moment, because you see Nicole make a move on her and you see Keith try to make a move on her, and that kind of confirms their love interest with her even more, because before they just be flirting or doing little like jealous kind of things, but now they're fully making a move.
You're not telling me that Keith wasn't trying to do anything when he was nipping at her neck and doing all these other advances, and you don't think that I mean, when Gordo was doing all those advances, and then you don't think that Keith was showing no type of love every time he kept butting in and being the third wheel and like shoving himself in there? You know, maybe Nicole, yes, not necessarily knowing, but you don't think there could have been another way to introduce those same ideas within the story while still progressing it along?
I mean, well, what did you want to see from this episode? Like, what were you kind of expecting? What, like, how much more of a plot development did you want? Like, what kind of questions were you looking to get answered?
Well, I mean, just a continuation of her interaction with Maria and how close are we getting to, you know, these final moments, because it was during the school that all of this happens where they fall in love and they get married, and then this is where her doom flag is, you know? So what else is she doing to prepare for this? Or even more, you know, interactions with the other characters and Maria, for instance. You know, because as of this point, the one initially Keith had an interaction with Maria, and when Katharina heard about it, she got immediately scared and started asking him a bunch of questions, right? And then you start slowly seeing the introduction of Maria into the group and her interacting with everyone else. You know, obviously with the buffer of Katarina, but you don't get to see her do anything like anyone falling in love or not. There's like just nothing happening there, even though she was supposed to be this like huge rock that now is not even an obstacle anymore. So at this point, what is the obstacle? Because even though Katarina may not know that she's not an obstacle anymore, we as the audience already can tell. So where is the story then leading to?
Okay, I see what you're saying. I do think though that at this point in the story, she's gotten so used to the world and gotten so comfortable that she's just enjoying it, you know, with them. I think she's just enjoying her time in life with them, because now she's not really like she doesn't have a current doom flag to avoid. She hasn't really noticed any, or at least not in this episode. And so she's just, you know, chilling for right now. And it didn't really bother me because we are on episode 6, and so we're still halfway through the season. There's another 6 episodes to further develop the plot. So I think giving us some time to just further build on the relationships, which I think is what this episode did.
I mean, I see her further in building the relationship with Nicole because it was hard to read him. But for everyone else, they're still acting the same way as they did for episodes 5, 4, and 3. Like that didn't necessarily change. You still see Keith trying to. I mean, you're all trying to invite Katarina into something and not butting everyone in. And you also see Keith always still butting in, and Katarina still being airheaded enough to invite everyone else to ruin his plot. You know, like that was something that was already used. So they basically recycled that one when they did that. The only thing that was really a driving force was during this scene, the mom was talking to the maid, and they were kind of talking about how, like, yeah, like Katarina, when she was little, she was really much of a brat, but ever since she hit her head, she's been like a very completely different person, and now people actually like her. Like the maid was selling herself too, like the gardener has taken a liking to her, even she has, where initially she didn't really even like her at all, you know. So that was really the only thing, but I feel like there could have been a way that they could have still done that while still having the story continue. Because to me, when an anime has 12 episodes, there's only so much you can do in order to progress a story, you know? So when I see a filler, that automatically to me shows that you don't have a lot of story to tell to begin with. Whereas I'm a little bit more lenient for 22 or 24 episode animes, because obviously with so much happening, maybe they do want to space out a couple things. But for a 12 episode anime, what are you trying to space out?
All right, but I don't think it should be looked at as them trying to space it out. I think what it is that this anime is also kind of like a slice of life kind of anime. So it's not surprising for me to watch an episode where they're just interacting with each other, because it furthers not necessarily the plot or like, oh my god, what's going to happen with her? Is she doomed? But it more so furthers their relationships with each other. It doesn't provide anything new, but you do get to see more interactions with them. And for me, seeing them hang out, like going to the river to do boat rides and have a boat race, and seeing them all want to fight to be in the same boat with Katarina, and seeing how all the girls are jumping to be with her and all the guys are jumping to be with her and their interaction between the guys and stuff and all the characters, it kind of really like further defined that relationship between. It just goes to show you how obsessed all the characters are with her, like to show you how much of a harem it is.
If I was going to accept this episode, then I would have wished for the interaction to be somewhat different, because to me it's the same interaction that has been happening, it's just in different settings now.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the thing, and I think that's maybe one of the faults that now the show is having with having dimensional characters, where it allows us to keep track as to how much change they have been able to do, because we're only focusing on one characteristic of that person, and now that we see that changed, but we're not seeing anything go more in depth. And I think it comes from them having one-dimensional characters to some extent, but it also comes from them not really wanting to go in depth and wanting to keep the show very happy, joyful, and airy. You know, like, there's no quorums with any of them. They're all perfectly fine with all fighting each other to a certain extent, but no one's really just like, Katarina, you know, like, you're not really showing me attention and blah blah blah, or like not really, you know, truly fighting. Because if this was like a real life where people truly want their feelings to be met, I feel like there would be more quarrels and stuff like that, and I feel like that would have been more real, or at least show more depth into the characters, you know, like how they did with Maria for episode 5.
Actually, you do bring up a fair point. I do think, though, that maybe because this is the mid episode of the season, that they're giving us one final like happy moment before, you know, shit really hits the fan. So and that's what this could do.
And I guess for that, we'll just have to see for later on. So, okay, so let's move into our overall feelings. How do you feel about the anime? What do you think thus far? Are you going to continue it? Do you not, you know, give me the lowdown?
So this anime is really different from ones that I'm like used to watching. I do watch all types, but lately I definitely been watching a lot of action centered kind of anime. So watching this one was a very like different experience from the ones that I've been currently watching. But I have really enjoyed it just because those heartwarming scenes really do, like, you know, feel like, I don't know, they just feel nice to watch. It's really like mood lifting, and I think they did a good job of, you know, the characters interacting with each other and like setting the world, and also tugging at your curiosity to keep you wondering, you know, what is going to happen to Katarina? Like, will she eventually meet her doom? Because that's what she's destined for, or is she going to be able to change it? How she's going to change it? How she's going to affect these characters' lives? I think that's what I'm mainly in it for, to see how she ultimately impacts the lives of these characters in this world. And I think I'm going to keep watching it because I am really curious to find out if the mother's going to have more involvement. So I definitely want to keep on watching for that, and just to see how it ends. But all in all, I think it's a really interesting show. I think it's worth watching for people who are into other genres. And I think it does, like, you know, hold your interest throughout the long run.
I agree. I do like how funny it is. It has had me chuckling and laughing in a lot of scenes. I do genuinely care for the characters, and I do actually like them a lot, and that shows a lot that the show was able to achieve. And I do want to see how it ends, although I'm interested in a lot of stuff. I'm interested about Cyrus and, you know, his role in all of this and how that's going to evolve. I'm wondering whether or not the show is going to continue being this heartfelt thing where it's not really trying to choose someone, it's just supposed to be all fun, or whether or not it's actually going to start to get down to the nitty gritty, because now, like you said, this is the halfway point. So everything after this is building up towards its ending. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think we're going to leave it off with that.